Well, hello everyone, it's Uptown, and welcome to my wig styling tutorial video for Marinette, or Ladybug, from Miraculous Ladybug. The wig that I'll be using in this tutorial is sponsored by Dresslily. First, let's talk about the wig as it first comes straight out of the bag. It already has all the parts that you'll need. Her pigtails, the longer pieces in front of her ears, as well as her bangs that will be side swept. All of these sections of hair are longer than they're really supposed to be, but this is really nice because it gives you flexibility in styling the wig yourself to get each part the length that you want. It's a pretty good color for her and has a good distribution of fibers all throughout the wig. If you look at the wig from the back, you'll notice that it doesn't have a center back part, meaning that it's not constructed specifically for pigtails. Pulling normal wigs like this into something like pigtails can be tough because you can sometimes see the wefts through the fibers like you can see here. This wig is straight out of the bag though, and you can see that Dresslily has already done a pretty decent job of hiding the wefts by taking a zigzag formation of hair from either side of the center back and pulling it into the opposite pigtail. The first step that I'm going to do in styling this wig the way that I want it is to fix up some of that sectioning myself and make it a bit more evenly distributed. To make sure you don't see any of the wefts, take a small section of hair on the far side of the center back, my sections were about 1 inch wide, and cross them over to the opposite side to go into the opposite pigtail. You will have to undo and then retie the pigtails on both sides multiple times as you resection these pieces of hair and cross them over, but if you go at it with some patience, it will pay off. Continue this process on both sides, alternating the sections that you're crossing over to the opposite pigtail until you like the way it looks. Once you're done, it looks pretty good from the back, and you can't see any of the wefts on the inside of the wig. Because this wig is still fresh out of a bag, it has some bag hair, which means that the hair has some waves, some little kinks in it from being, well, stuffed in a bag. So we're going to take a hairdryer to it. Applying heat while helping to straighten the fibers with your fingers and to guide them into the shape that you want will help reset the shape of them. Please make sure that your wig is actually made of heat-resistant fibers before using something super hot like a flat iron. Melting your wig is not a good time. Because I've worked with a lot of Dresslily wigs in the past, I know that blow dryers work wonders on them, and they're plenty hot enough to retrain the fibers into whatever shape that I need them to be. The reason I'm straightening these longer pieces right now is because I want them straighter and a more accurate representation of how long they really are, so that I can go in and cut them to the correct length and not have any waves to straighten out later and find out that I still have to cut more hair. Now that these pieces are straight, the back is fixed, pigtails look good, I can now start to figure out how I want this to be cut. Marinette's bangs are side swept, but in between the part of her bangs and the long piece that goes in front of her right ear, she has some shorter pieces of hair that I'm separating from the rest of the bangs now. The next couple of steps I'm going to do while I'm wearing the wig. Chances are you won't be able to see a gosh darn thing with these long bangs in your face, so I recommend clipping them up and out of the way until you need to trim them. Next, I'm going to readjust the placement of each pigtail so that they're sitting on the correct point at the back of my head, replacing the elastics that the wig came with small black ones so that they don't show up as much. Once you've adjusted the placement of both pigtails, I recommend double checking the back of your wig with a couple of mirrors to make sure that they're placed evenly. Time to start cutting. Looking at reference pictures, Marinette's side pieces that hang in front of her ears on either side of her bangs reach to about the corner of her jawline, so I'm using my own jaw as a reference point when cutting the hair. To keep my cuts from being too blunt or too straight across, I'm using my hair cutting scissors and cutting upwards vertically on the ends to shorten the length. To taper the shape towards the ends, I'm then going in the opposite direction and cutting downwards to create layers. Take it slow and take your time. Remember that it's always better to start with hair that's too long as opposed to getting too ambitious and cutting it too short, because once it's too short, there's no going back. Once the first side is to a place that you're happy with, start on the second side and you can use the first side that you've already cut as a reference point to make sure that both sides are an even length. Next, I'm tackling the large portion of her side-swept bang, so I'm taking the smaller pieces of hair that are going to be separate and tying them off to keep them out of the way. Using the same techniques as before, I'm cutting at the ends upwards instead of horizontally to make sure that they're not too choppy. To make sure that I don't end up cutting these bangs too short, which would be devastating, I'm stopping frequently and only cutting small portions off at a time. Because her bangs are slanted and side swept, I'm making sure to keep the hair longest at the corners of my face and then steadily cut them shorter as I move towards the other side. To give her bangs a bit more texture, I'm now going in and cutting downwards along sections of hair to add layers. To make it easier to texturize the bangs, I've now brought out my thinning shears, and I'm going upwards at the ends of the hair as well as also using it downwards to add more layering. I also planned on going in with the thinning shears later once I could see it more clearly on the wig head. I'm generally happy with the length and texture of the bangs now, so now I'm moving on to the smaller pieces of hair that are on the other side of her face. I'm using the very same approach as I did for the longer side pieces in front of her ears. At this point, I'll also note that later I decided that the side pieces that hang in front of her ears had too much hair in them, and I wanted to section off a little bit out of them and add it into the bangs. If you also decide that you want those sections of hair to be a little bit smaller, I'd recommend you do that at some point during these steps. Now that the basic cuts and lengths are figured out on the front half of your wig, take it off and put it back on your wig head so you can work with it a bit more easily. Marinette's bangs are reasonably poofy, and I wanted the bangs on this wig to have a little bit more volume to them without being too extreme, so I'm lifting up layers of the wig, teasing them at the roots with a teasing comb, adding a little bit of hairspray, teasing again, and smoothing the hair out on top of it. Keep repeating these steps until you have the amount of volume you desire. To make sure that the section of bangs that are supposed to be side-swept across her forehead are behaving themselves and laying in the direction that I need them to, I'm attacking them with the blow dryer again. I'm now styling the smaller pieces of hair on the other side of her face. I'm following reference pictures of Marinette's hair to separate that small piece of hair into two smaller pieces. To make them hold their shape, I'm taking some got-to-be glued free spray, spraying a little bit on my fingertips, and then using that hairspray to twist the ends of each piece of hair. This forms spikes. While holding each spike in place with my fingers and in the shape and curvature that I want, I blast it briefly with warm air from a hairdryer and then hold that piece in place while it cools. This same method can be used to make spikes on basically any wig. I'm now going back into those side pieces and the bangs with my thinning shears and cleaning up the ends to make sure that they have the exact texture that I want. Lightly go over the back and sides of your wig with some hairspray to smooth out any flyaways. In addition to the little turnips Marinette has on the back of her head for her pigtails, she also has smaller strands of hair that stay separate from them. From each pigtail, I'm sectioning off a small piece of hair and pulling it out of the pigtail so that I can pin it up and keep it separate for me to style later. Once I have those small pieces out, I take out the pigtail itself, now that I have the placement already figured out from before, re-secure it with hair elastics, and then use more hair elastics to tie that small piece that I've separated back on top of the pigtail, so that they're paired together but separated by a layer of elastics. Once that's done, I test out teasing the inside of the pigtail to see how well the fibers cooperated and could achieve a more voluminous rounded shape. It looked like it was headed in the right direction, so I decided to go with this method and see if I could make it work. I started off by taking the outer layers that surrounded the entire base of the pigtail. These were the sections of hair that I wanted to keep separate because I was going to smooth them back around the inner part of the pigtail that I was going to tease the heck out of. To start doing this, I separated the inner part of the pigtail out, took got-to-be glued free spray, and sprayed the inside of the wig and then started to tease it with my teasing comb upwards. Just like with the bangs, spray, tease, spray, tease, repeat, repeat, repeat until you get the shape that you need. This process can get kinda tedious because you need to do it a lot, and it can take a while, but again, approach it with patience and determination and you will get through it. After going at this for ages, I finally managed to make the inside of the pigtail basically turn into a giant hairball. Because this inside part of the pigtail started out very, very long, It helped to take the ends that were still hanging down, spray them with hairspray, tease them a lot, and then basically stuff them up inside the middle of this hairball. I then took the outside part that I had sectioned off earlier, unpinned it, and let it fall around the hairball that I've now created. If you find out that you didn't section off quite enough hair to smooth around the inside teased part to really cover it up and make a smooth outside shell, feel free to grab some of that hair out of it that you can then comb out and smooth around it. After looking at the hair tie layers that I had, I found the smaller strand that I had separated before and pinned it out of the way so it wouldn't get mixed up in the rest of the pigtails. Feel free to go back in and re-tease some of the ends. And now Marinette's mighty hair turnips can finally start to take shape. I followed the wig's natural tendency to swirl around the inner bulb, hairspraying small parts of it, and flattening and smoothing them out as I went with a fine-toothed comb. One thing I've never really understood and never quite gotten on board with Marinette's animation in the show itself, the hair just comes straight out of her pigtails and goes straight to the point in a very linear fashion, and that just doesn't cognitively make sense to me. In any attempt to make a wig for Marinette look even semi-believable or realistic, I feel like the direction the hairs would go into this shape just didn't make sense, and so I was actually really happy to see that this wig was naturally falling in a swirl design instead of just going straight to a point. This is of course just my personal preference and opinion on Marinette's design, so if you decided you preferred something else, definitely go for it. After spraying down and smoothing out the pigtail bulbs from the top, working my way down, I left the ends relatively unsprayed so that I could go in with my hair cutting scissors and start to trim off excess length. Once I felt like I had the size and shape about where I wanted it, I went in with a heavier duty hairspray, smoothed out the hairs, brought out my hairdryer, and gently blew warm air around the pigtail while helping it keep its shape with my hands. Remember to hold it in place while it cools, or else the fibers won't remember the shape and will start to lose form. I decided the hair turnips were still too big and too long, so I went in with my thinning shears and started to cut off more length from the bottom. Remember to go in with a fine-toothed comb if you're using thinning shears on something like this, because they tend to leave a lot of hair clippings inside of the hair, so make sure you comb them out. And my camera cut out when I was finishing up this bulb, so I'll do my best to explain what I did. Once you have the desired length of your hair bulb, take a lot of hairspray, drench the ends, twist them together with your fingers into a point, and then blow it with your warm hairdryer and keep it pinched together while it cools. This will cement the ends together into shape. You can also go in with something like clear tacky glue if you want an even stronger hold. Now that we're caught up, time to address the little strands of hair that like to float above her pigtails. To give them a little bit of volume and dimension, I teased the base of them repeatedly and then smoothed out the outer hairs. I'm now going back in with my scissors and trimming off the excess length until they are the length that I want. Thin out and taper the ends with thinning shears if you have them. To finalize their shape, I'm spraying it with hairspray, twisting the ends, and once again heating it with a blow dryer and sculpting it into shape with my hands. That is one side completely done, and here is the finished result. Now all you have to do is repeat all of that all over again on the other side and make them match. Oh boy! After doing all of that, here is what the wig looked like. The last bit of business I attended to were the ends of the bangs. The feathered edges of Marinette's side-swept bangs seemed to fall in sections, so I took some hairspray and focused it at the ends of the bangs and used my fingers to group them gently. And now you're finally ready to save Paris. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope it was helpful for you. If you want to know how to recreate this makeup look, head over to my makeup tutorial. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Take care!